Hello everybody, welcome back to Photo Australia. Great to have you along again. Today we're going to do something a little different. We're going to look at software today. So I'm going to hand over to Grant for this episode and let's see what he's got for us today. So over to Grant.
Yeah, hi Brad. And folks, welcome to episode 4 already. Hey, there's a lot of feedback we get occasionally on photography and how much it costs. And it's an expensive thing to be doing. And one of the problems that people talk to me about occasionally is software. And they hear about Adobe, they hear about On1, they hear about all these other programs which are fantastic. They're all good. But the costs of them do put people off, particularly if you're new to this game and you're trying to find your way, or you're my vintage and you're the old dog and you're trying to learn new tricks. You hesitate to spend the money, wise man, when you're not sure about what you're buying. So what we have here is a program called Raw Therapy that is now on your screen, hopefully. Raw Therapy is a free program and you can download it here by Googling Raw Therapy as printed there, THERAPEE, and we all need a bit of that in these conditions. And that's the screen you'll get on Google. So you go to that, you download that, it is free. It doesn't do anything nasty to you, it is free. So we hop out of that and Brad, my mouse is not working and closing the program down.
I will give you full control.
Now I've lost my mouse.
Bring it over to your screen. That's it.
Okay, there we go. And we close that down. Right, so on this computer, you'll see we have the Raw Therapy program set up. So we open it up and we'll get to the latest version of it. And this is what it looks like. It has, over here on the left, you start off with a file browser, which we're in at the moment. And it gives you all sorts of information. You click on an image, let's just grab this one down here for example, and it'll tell you about the image. It was shot with f2.8, f-stop 22, shutter speeds, etc, etc, etc. So all the information's there. You can batch edit from here, you can fast export, tells you what camera you use, the lens you use, etc, etc. You can also batch produce your files, batch export. Q will tell you what you're doing to send your images off to wherever you want to send them to. And then we come to the editor, which is where you do all your homework. So in the editor, up the top here, you get your film strip of images, and I'm just going to grab one. We'll grab this one. Double click on your image and you'll get the full working version down here. Over on the right hand side we have all of these bars and each one opens up a different screen underneath it, as you can see there. So we'll come back to the exposure one. Now I'm not going to go into it in great detail. And I'm going to drop Brad in the deep end here because Brad has never used this program and he's pretty handy, very handy in fact, with the software.
I've never seen this software, so okay. It should be interesting for me.
So I'm going to, can you operate it from there or do you need to come here?
I can probably, we'll just pause for a second.
Yep.
Very good.
So Brad, this is dropping you in the deep end, but perhaps before you start, would you just like to explain to the folks what open source software is?
The way I look at open source, Grant, is that the software is open for creators and they have the ability to put their own different tools and whatnot to work with the software. I'm not knowing this software, I'm not sure the level that they let creators able to do it, but it's usually free software and that gives you the opportunity to to be able to get in more in depth in the actual software itself and make changes. Is that the way you see it, Grant?
Yes, it is, and that's why I really want to involve you in this, Brad, because you're a pretty cluey guy when it comes to this type of stuff. I'm just a self-taught guy over the years. I just pick up bits and pieces and do my best to muddle through it. So you're looking here on the right-hand side, and you'll have this on your screen.
Yes.
You see the exposure screen, and on the right-hand side is a bar that you can pull down.
Yep.
And you get all these other different things. Now,
Sliders a bit like, I'm used to Lightroom and that with Adobe products, so I'm very used to sliders, but I do know you've also got a tone curve there, so going into Photoshop territory there by the looks.
you will find this is a very complex program. This is not a Mickey Mouse thing that comes with your software on your camera, and that stuff it's okay, but it is pretty basic. This goes a lot further. Across the top here, you'll see all these other little icons that I'm just running over. So as you go through, you click on a different one, you get a different set of tools and adjustments each time. So I'm just going to run through them quickly for you and then hand it over to you to have a play with. So in the exposure, you have obviously your auto levels, etc., your compensations, the plus minus buttons there, you can hit that and plus minus, etc., mess around with it. The little arrow there, you see, you hit that and it resets it. So it does those little things for you. Shadows and highlights, I really like this tone mapping tool. When you hit that, it really does some really good things.
Notice that it does change the a lot of the light in the dark areas too.
Oh, yes.
when you click
Yep.
that.
Your vignettes, your graduator filter. Now, with Raw Therapy, to operate any of these tools, you must first of all click on the little dot alongside the name. Like here where I'm in shadows and highlights, if I click on that, you see it turns on. And now all the adjustments I can now use accordingly.
So with these tools, are they different type of people have put these extra tools in? Is
I
that
believe
what's
so.
happened?
Yes, I believe so. This is, I think you're seeing a lot of the tools that are in Raw Therapy popping up in other programs. Myself, I think you'll see things in here as you go through that are quite different to other software. For example, lab adjustments here. L star dot A star dot B star is a colour adjustment. Most of us work in sRGB, but there's also this lab colour as well. So if we just pop across to the next one very quickly to the detail, then we have sharpening, local contrast, and then you play around with edges, micro contrast, you get into noise reduction, and you come down the bottom and you've got this thing called haze removal. I'll give you a quick little example. Bang. It does some quite incredible stuff. Off. Coming across to the next one, we have the white balance and colour tools. And it's where you got your vibrancy tool, your channel mixers. You can go in and mess around in here. As you can see, there's a lot of different things in here that you're not going to see in a more generic software. Coming across to the little squirrel, I'm not actually sure what that means, but they have developed this thing that they call Retinex. And it is supposedly what the eye sees, thus the term Retinex. So if you click on that, the program applies what it thinks the human eye would see if you're actually there instead of what the camera has seen. So I'll click off of that, and then on you go with more and more. We get down here, we have this thing called wavelets now. I haven't even gone into this, Brad, but it looks interesting. And we get down here and you have your really interesting little tool again in Final Touch-Up. When you've done and you hit that, and it just does a little thing of its own that makes little corrections where I think you might have gone a bit too far or whatever. Excuse me. It's imperceptible, but it still does a little bit of whatever. Then you've got your cropping tool over here and your resizing and post-size resharpening, etc., etc. And on it goes. So I'm not even going to get into this one because I don't understand any of that.
Can you put grad filters on photos at all?
Yeah, back here in the, here we go.
Okay,
in the
exposure,
initial
yep.
plus minus exposure page.
Yep.
There it is. So with that, I'm going to butt out and let you have a play.
Okay.
I'll be interested to see what you think of raw therapy.
Did you want to have you got a reset back to original?
Yes.
Otherwise, you know what people like out there, they'll say, oh, Grant has already half processed that.
No, okay. On the exposure page, do you have auto levels on your...
Yeah, I'm seeing what you're seeing. Yep,
okay,
auto
so
levels.
I have hit reset.
Yep.
So there is nothing I have done. Or you can go and choose a new image from the film strip up the top.
Oh, well, how about we choose a new shot here?
Drag it along and...
Let's have a look here. All right, well, let's just give one of these a go.
These are all from our beautiful Flinders ranges too, by the way, folks.
Okay, so yep, it's selected that photo. And usually the first thing, I'm going to attack this a little bit like with Lightroom. So the first thing is I look at exposure, and I usually like to look at my blacks, contrasts and that. So that's all, which is really good. They've, by the looks of things, they've done very similar to Lightroom. They put a lot of the controls up front as the first things that you look at. So let's have a look at now this is going to be difficult, Grant, because the screen I'm looking at is a TV screen. Until we're still after a couple of little devices to put in proper monitors. So the colours I know on this TV screen is usually very contrasty. So what you'll see will be different to what I see at the moment.
That's fine.
So I'm going to be probably processing what I see in front of me.
Yep, that's fine. And folks, when we're looking, we're just trying to do a quick and dirty test of this software here to give you an overview of it. So please don't judge the final image as a final result. We're just playing around.
Now, one thing I do with Lightroom, and as Grant says, I have not even opened this software before. So this is my very, very first time looking at it. I'm playing with shadows at the moment. I find with photos, depending on the exposure it was taken and the time of day, I quite often do play with shadows a little bit. So with what I'm looking at is the scene looked a little bit dark and a little bit flat, which raw files will do that. So our cameras are basically waiting for us to do the processing instead of it.
And I'll just jump in here. What Brad also doesn't know, or that's probably worked out by now, but I always try and underexpose by about a stop when I'm shooting in these types of environments.
Which is actually a very good thing to do. When you're in, and I'll need to keep pushing on with this photo in a minute, but when you're in very difficult lighting, and I'm glad you picked a really nice time to be photographing, morning or afternoon light, you're dealing with very bright areas in your photo, and you're also dealing with very dark areas in your photo. So by underexposing, it's made sure that Grant hasn't lost any detail in his brights, which is a really good tip for photographing in difficult lighting conditions. That gives me with modern cameras, have really good dynamic range to pull detail out of shadows. And because Grant has done that, I'm actually able to do that with software. And that way I can lift the shadows and show a bit of detail and a bit of brightness. So already it's lifted a lot I've changed just shadows, and I've added a bit of brightness in the shadows, So now I'm going to scroll down. What else have we got in here? Okay, shadows and highlights.
So remember, if you want to use that, click on the little dot alongside the name.
Yep.
Yep, there, that's
So
it.
this is another, looks like another panel, which is interesting because you can actually tell that there's multiple people who have written this software because this is another panel that controls exactly shadows and highlights. A bit more detail in the shadows and highlights. So let's see, and I'm a good one of just pushing sliders around just to see exactly what tonal range it's affecting. So this one again is also lifting shadows. It's important not to lose all your shadows, by the way. Shadow tonal width. Okay, very fine adjustment on that one. Highlights, which will be mainly affecting the sky because the sky is the brightest part in this photo. I also, which is good to see, on my left is the histogram. So I actually can see where my white point or the brightest part of the photo, where it's sitting in the range, and also my shadows, which I've lifted my shadows out of the dark range a little bit. But at the moment, my highlights aren't all the way to the right. So I will now start working on that. Dynamic range compression, what's this one?
Just go back up one, Brad, before you do that. Just go back up to tone mapping. Have a look at that.
Okay, so this one looks like, to me, is adding a little bit of clarity. It has the appearance of clarity, but I believe it is working on a few different things, because I think clarity and sharpness are in the next tab from what you described.
Exactly.
But it almost, it definitely looks like it's adding, to me, it looks like similar to clarity to the, but it's not quite. No, I'll take that back. It's not, it is changing the light. There's some interesting sliders here.
Isn't it?
Certainly a lot of control, I must admit. And this is free software, is that right?
It's free software.
It's pretty good.
Yeah. So pop down now to your dynamic range. Perhaps turn them off as you go, so you don't.
Yeah, well, I've decided I just had a look at tone mapping. I'm happy with the way I've adjusted the tone mapping. The dynamic range compression. I'll be interested to see what it does to the histogram too. Oh, it does change. It certainly has a lot of change on that photograph. It's really pushing it. With most of my edits in photography, I don't usually push things too hard. I have vignette, grad filter. Now, can you move? Okay, what's this here?
But turn it on first. You haven't turned it on.
Yeah, yes.
There you go. So now you got the full control.
Okay.
And you can make that bigger, smaller. Just drag the bars.
Yeah, the bars. Yep.
Okay. You can tilt it. You can do all sorts of things.
Yeah.
With it.
Yep. Okay, so that's affecting the top of the image by the looks. Okay, so that's affecting the top of the image. So you would be able to affect the bottom. Yeah, that's interesting. Like I said before, I'll usually turn things to the max just to see the area of effect. So here I know that I'm affecting the bottom, and if I just bring that down just a little bit more. With some of these types of photos, I'll actually put a grad filter on the bottom and just darken it slightly. Hence that you'll probably have to brighten the photo, but it also helps to give you a bit of a step to lead you into a photo. So quite often I'll just add just a little bit on the bottom, and you'll see the effect. At the moment it's darkened the foreground a little bit, so now I would brighten the foreground, and that will still leave that grad filter there. And if I go back up to the top, you can just brighten the image a little bit. Now that you've got to keep in mind that that's going to change the sky as well. So what you can do in that case is you can bring that back down again with another grad filter if needed. So does this give you another one? How do you add another one?
I don't know. I haven't tried this one. It's not.
I would think that you'd be able to add another one. What are these tools up here? There's your rotation. There's so many tools in here. Sorry folks, we're going to have to leave that episode right there. So this will be a double episode. So if you enjoyed the episode, give us a thumbs up. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. And we'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.